growing up for me, it was all about being scrappy. It was all about when life hits you in the face, how do you respond? Um, I remember many times growing up when people would bring food to our house. Having 7 kids and not making a lot of money, it was hard to get by at times. I remember different Christmases when people would bring by gifts and we had no idea who it was. My dad would always say, and this kind of stuck with me and everything. He would always say, it'll get better. It always does. Things will get better. They will. And I learned resilience, perseverance, and drive through all of these times just because of what I saw my dad do. He was never above working hard. And that was just ingrained in my mind that the harder you work, that things will work out, even though they might not work out how you thought they would or in the timing that you thought they might. As I got older, I had multiple jobs in high school. Growing up in Nebraska, I actually sold a pop at the University of Nebraska football games. So every Saturday I would go to the games and sell pop up and down the stadium. And I had a bunch of other high school type jobs. When I left for my mission, I served an LDS mission in Zimbabwe, and it was kind of a pivotal moment for me because of the different lessons that I learned while I was on my mission. I was able to see a lot of people that they didn't have a lot, and yet they were really happy. I remember thinking growing up that if I just had more money, I'd be a lot happier than maybe I was. It almost felt like for me that's what happiness was, and that's how I would actually get there. But seeing people in Zimbabwe and seeing the different things that they were going through, and yet they were so happy. And when I would share with them about Jesus, just their reactions and just how it would fill their hearts, was so motivating for me and helped me realize that, there's a lot more to that. There was a time on my mission when I was talking to another missionary, and he was just talking about different airplanes and different types. And I remember he asked me and he said, "Hey, what are you good at?" And it was one of those times when I kind of scratched my head and I kind of thought, I'm actually not entirely sure what I'm good at. And I really thought about it. And it was something that I thought about for weeks. And then something clicked for me. And then in that moment, I realized that whatever I wanted to be good at, if I really wanted it, if I worked hard enough, that I could do it, and I could be good at that thing, whatever it was. And that moment has been so loud to me throughout everything with Kodiak Cakes and working in different areas. It's helped me to realize that the harder I work, that I can be good at something. I can be good at whatever I do. And I never was great in high school. When I enrolled in LDS Business College, I saw that all starting to happen. I saw that in college it could actually work. I could actually learn. And that first semester, it all just clicked. I was on the dean's list for the first time in my life, and it was kind of this moment for me where that lesson I had learned on my mission on me being able to do anything as if I worked hard enough had become a reality in school. And so as those kind of worked together, it kind of set it off my mental thoughts and where I could go while I was at LDS Business College. I had a lot of different jobs to pay for school. I sold tickets for the Jazz just right there, which was exciting for me to work with the Jazz and be able to go to some of the games. I worked at a catering company there in Sandy. I found a job selling blank CDs and DVDs to larger companies. And I'm realizing as I'm saying that I'm hopeful that there's people here on this Zoom meeting that still know what CDs and DVD players and CDs and DVDs are. And so as I'm saying that, I'm like, shoot, am I really that old? And so it's just a reminder that I'm a little bit older than I think I realize. But I did that job, and I left that job to sell food storage. And it's interesting because I'm told in my patriarchal blessing that after my mission, it says, you will know what you want to do. You'll know exactly what you want to do and be able to study for that. So I got back from my mission, and here I'm thinking, okay, I'm back. Now what? Now what? Because you say here that this is now what's going to happen. So now I was almost in kind of a waiting mode, like now I'll wait and see. And I bounced around to these different jobs and still didn't have that. Here's exactly what you want to do. I transferred from LDS Business College after I finished and went to the University of Utah. Still trying to figure out, I studied business. I was still trying to figure out exactly what I want to do. And while I was selling food storage, I started to look for other jobs. And as I was looking for the other jobs, it was still that bounce around effect where nothing really seemed to be exactly right. I remember an interview specifically that I went into, and the interview went really well. I remember the guy telling me at the end of the interview, yeah, you seem very entrepreneurially minded. And I remember thinking, yeah, totally. That's exactly how I think. And that was almost like a negative for him. He almost saw that as, that's not exactly what we're looking for. We're more looking for someone to come in and do a job and kind of doing what we're asking them to do. And so that was kind of a head scratcher for me as well. And, thinking about this whole adversity and thinking about where am I trying to go? And my patriarchal blessing says this, but this is exactly what I'm feeling. And near the end of my schooling at the University of Utah, I actually told my wife that I was going to drop out. I said, hey, I'm going to drop out, and I had like maybe a year left. I'm going to drop out and I'm going to do this business idea with one of my buddies. And being the great wife that she is, she called me out. She said, no, you're not. She's like, that would be the dumbest thing you ever do. You have less than a year left. Just finish it, and then things will work out after that. And I took a deep breath. I remember her and I talking about this business venture, and we prayed about it, and this was another defining moment when we prayed about it. We had the very distinct feeling that that's not what we should do. It was clear to both of us. We actually got up after praying, looked at each other, and we were like, wow, no, right? I mean, I got a clear no, and she got a clear no. So here I'm left. It's been 4 years since my mission, 4.5, and I'm still trying to, or 3.5 rather, I'm still trying to figure out exactly what it is I'm supposed to be doing. I still don't know exactly. And there's almost this, like, I had this business idea, and it wasn't what we were supposed to do. So I was just feeling lost and uncertain about where I should go. I remembered what I'd said earlier, that my dad had said that things will work out, but I was having a hard time seeing that. I was having a hard time knowing that things would work out because I couldn't see as far into the future as I wanted to. I remember searching on the University of Utah's job board. I was similar to a lot of you in searching job boards and trying to find something that would just work, and the mental things that you go through and the mental challenges and how that hits your confidence. I remember searching the University job board, and I saw a job post from Kodiak Cakes, and it was for a marketing position. I remember seeing that and thinking, I don't know that I'm can do marketing very well. And so I actually passed the job a couple of times. And then finally I was like, you know what, I guess I'll just apply to this job. So I applied to the job at Kodiak Cakes. I went in and met with Joel Clark, who's the CEO today, and his dad. And I remember after meeting with him, getting really excited about the opportunity to work at Kodiak Cakes. And it's funny in that moment, because as I think about it today, I'm not exactly sure then why I was so excited about this opportunity. The company was under $1 million in sales. Joel had been running it with his dad or his brother for 15 years before that. It was a pancake business that not many people before then had heard of it, including myself. There were no reasons to believe that it would be as successful as it is today. but something about it just felt right for me. It felt right for me in that moment. It felt right for me in where I was hoping to go. It wasn't, it's funny because I was talking to my wife, and if I remember accurately, I was the only one that Joel interviewed at that time. So it also wasn't incredibly competitive. It's not like he interviewed 1,000 people and I rose to the top because of just the way my mind thinks and everything. It wasn't that at all. It was more he needed someone at this time to help grow Kodiak and to take it to a different place than it had been. It had been grown to this point up to $1 million in yearly sales, which is good, but still smaller and still needed to get more opportunities. And I remember when I joined, I was hungry to do everything I could to grow Kodiak Cakes, even though I didn't know the challenges or obstacles that were in front of us. I kind of had blinders, and I think there's a benefit at times to having blinders and to not seeing all the obstacles. I think when you see obstacles, sometimes you're more prone to fixate on the obstacles instead of what you're going to look like after you get through the obstacles. So I just remember thinking in that moment that I remember coming home and telling my wife, hey, I met with Joel at Kodiak Cakes, and I think this would be really cool. I think this would be really exciting. And bless her heart, at that time, she was like, great, I just need you to get a job. You need to be doing something instead of hanging out at the house. So if you could get a job, that sounds great. I pretty early on at Kodiak Cakes, working with Joel, he kind of tasked me with, hey, reach out to retailers, reach out to, at that time, bloggers were bigger before Instagram. Instagram wasn't a thing quite yet. This was 2009, 2010. So I started reaching out to bloggers and sending them samples of Kodiak Cakes. I started reaching out to retailers like Kroger or Smith's, Harmon's, Costco, and Target, and pretty much just cold calling them. I would call up the retailer buyers and I would tell them, hey, we have a pancake mix here called Kodiak Cakes. I'd love to come and show it to you, and hopefully you'll see why Kodiak Cakes would be great in your grocery stores. And I would do that, and I wasn't getting anywhere, but I just kept pushing and calling. I remember I decided to make a whole list of every grocery store in the U.S. to determine who to call, and planned out what I would say. And a lot of times these retailers, they wouldn't answer their phone. I remember I decided to call Hy-Vee, being in Nebraska, a large retailer. For those of you coming from the Midwest, there's a large retailer called Hy-Vee. So I called them, and in calling them, I said I wasn't planning for the grocery buyer who bought pancake mixes to answer the phone, and because most of the time they didn't. So I called, it started ringing, and the buyer answered the phone and said his name. And I remember I kind of froze in the moment, and I kind of thought, hey, we sell pancakes. And it just kind of threw me off because I wasn't expecting him to answer. And I talked to him about Kodiak Cakes, and he didn't totally see it and didn't think it would work in their grocery store. At this time, we worked with a lot of what we'd call a third-party group that helped sell our products into grocery stores. I called one of them and told them I wanted to get Kodiak Cakes into a grocery store out there called Roundy's, which is in Wisconsin. He said they had tried it before and it didn't sell very well for them, and they probably weren't going to be interested. I remember at that time I had a couple of thoughts, and I think what happens in life, a lot of times we hit the fork in the road, and we have to decide which path we're going to take. And I think when we hit these adversities, those are the times that, depending on the path that we decide to take, that's what starts to define who we are and where we end up and where ultimately we're trying to go. And as I look at all these little forks in the roads, they're throughout, from growing up, the forks in the road, to mission, the forks in the road, to jobs after the mission. And now even with Kodiak, just the different forks in the road. So I remember at that time I had a choice. Would I take his word that Kodiak wouldn't work in these places, or would I call Roundy's and have a conversation with the person responsible and help them think differently than they had thought before about Kodiak, or help give them reasons why it would work today when maybe before it didn't. I decided I was going to call the Roundy's buyer. So I called them. I went out to Wisconsin to show them Kodiak cakes and basically ask for another shot and say, hey, this time around, here's what we're going to do. Here's how we're going to make Kodiak cakes successful for you. I remember it was a really tough conversation. I remember the buyer really pushed back and said, look, I don't know that it's going to work because it hasn't worked in the past. But if you guys partner with us, yeah, we can give it 6 months to see if it'll work. So in the end, the buyer decided to give us another shot and to bring Kodiak cakes in. But that moment and seeing that started to show me the same thing that I realized on my mission, that whatever I wanted to do, if I wanted it hard enough and if I worked hard enough, I could get it and I could get there. And that didn't mean it was going to be easy. That didn't mean I could, just make the call and things were going to happen. But I really had to work for it. Another time that, as we were growing Kodiak cakes, Joel and I were in the office, and he came to the office one day and he said, hey, have you ever put protein in your pancake mixes? I'm like, no, I haven't at all. He's like, my family and I have been putting a scoop of protein in our pancake mixes and it's really, really good. What do you think if we launched a product like that? And I was like, yeah, I don't know, Joel, that's kind of interesting. And so we started tinkering with it in the office and trying to see what's the right level of protein we could put in, what type, and then we would make it in the office, and it actually worked out really well. It tasted really good, and the balance in what protein brought was a balanced nutrition product that tasted really good. And Joel and I kind of saw this as, hey, this could be kind of interesting to sell at retailers and to see if consumers would want to buy these products. So we were pretty excited about it. We went and told Target about it, and Target they leaned into us. We had a really good relationship with them. And I remember we told our Target buyer, that's what we call them as buyers, told our Target buyer, hey, here's Kodiak cakes with protein in it. And the buyer said, man, this is really interesting. Hey, we're going to bring it into pretty much all of our stores. So Joel and I were really, really excited about that. We went to another retailer in the East Coast called ShopRite, and we told another third-party sales group. We said, hey, we have this new protein pancake mix. We're calling it Power Cakes, because before, Kodiak cakes didn't have protein in it. It was just add water only, whole grain pancake mix. So now we started adding protein in it, and that was in 2014. So I remember telling that sales group, I remember telling them, hey, I really want to show ShopRite this higher protein pancake mix. I think this could work really well for them. At that time, he said, hey, this is too niche, and it wouldn't work in mainstream grocery store. And he said, let's not show it to ShopRite. I don't think they'd be interested. I remember telling him, hey, well, Target actually told us they want to bring it to all their stores. He's like, okay, but let's still not show that. One of the things that kind of stuck out to me at that time was, just because one person believes in you doesn't mean that everyone else will. I kind of thought that because Target was bringing Kodiak cakes in, everyone else was going to jump on and realize that this product is going to work everywhere. And it wasn't the case. I had to tell other people and give them reasons to believe that this was going to work. And it was that same lesson from my mission again, sticking out in my mind, that if I wanted something bad enough, I could get it. I just have to work really hard to get there. That kind of takes me back to this last journal conference, the talk by Sister Jones, where she had President Nelson, and they talk a lot about effort. And he says here, and I quote, when God wanted to give the 10 commandments to Moses, where did he tell Moses to go? Up on top of a mountain, on the top of Mount Sinai. So Moses had to walk all the way up to the top of that mountain to get the 10 commandments. Now, Heavenly Father could have said, Moses, you start there, and I'll start here, and I'll meet you halfway. No, the Lord loves effort, because effort brings rewards that can't come without it. End quote. I love that quote so much. And as I think about the different times in my life, and as I think about that lesson I learned as a missionary, that if I want something hard enough, I just have to work really hard for it. And then when President Nelson says, the Lord loves effort, and he just wants to see effort, I've seen that take place in every aspect of my life. It's been funny. It's been something that my kids are, so I have 4 kids. The oldest is 8, and then almost 9, and then 7 is my boy, and then my little girl. I've been mountain biking with my boy a few times, and there have been a couple of times when he's had a hard time and he wanted to be done, and it was really challenging for him, and I told him, hey, you can do this. Look at how hard you're trying. And all God wants to see is he just wants to see you trying. You don't have to win. You don't have to be the best. He just wants to see your effort. So now it's kind of been something that whenever I see my kids going through something hard, I'll just tell them, hey, good job. Keep trying. God's happy with you because right now you're showing effort. And that's exactly what he wants to see. We were able to get Power Cakes into that retailer, but it wasn't for many years later. We had a challenge with that retailer, and sometimes with adversity, we're able to get the solution a lot quicker. Other times it takes time. Other times it has to sit there for a little bit and we have to let it stew. Other times we have to put it on the shelf and come back to it later and focus on other areas. If I was so persistent and so focused on getting Kodiak Cakes into ShopRite, I probably would have missed a lot of other opportunities and a lot of other retailers. And I think that's what Heavenly Father wants to see. He wants to see us continue to try. And sometimes we have to put something on the shelf for later, and we have to focus in other areas and continue to build and grow. A lot of times, one of the things that I've thought about is a lot of times as you're building a business or facing different things with a career or work, a lot of the focus is on your business and what you've done. But there are a handful of times when my wife and I faced challenges, even while I was working at Kodiak. And so they became these personal challenges. Shortly after my son, he was 8 now and was our firstborn was born, my wife and I were having some financial struggles. I worked at Kodiak with Joel, and we had recently bought a fixer-upper house, and we're in the middle of a remodel, and we had the little boy. And one of the things no one really tells you when you start working with a small business is that typically the insurance coverage isn't great. It's sometimes there, but it's not awesome. My salary was, call it $40,000 to $45,000 a year. And my wife were hit with about a $10,000 medical bill for his birth, and we didn't know what to do. So here I am trying to call retailers to bring in Kodiak, and in the back of my mind now I know I've got to get them to carry Kodiak, because if I can get them to carry Kodiak, then I can hopefully make more money to help now cover some of these bills that we need to take care of. I remember telling my wife, and there were a couple of times that she told me, she was like, hey, you got to get a different job. I don't think you're getting paid enough. And, there are a lot of these financial challenges that we were facing. And I remember telling her, like, hey, it'll be okay. It'll all work out. I know it'll work out. Let's just stay the course. Let's just focus on this and we'll keep growing it. I knew that if I worked hard enough and showed effort, that we would be blessed. It was a hard time. The challenges weren't taken away. I think our strength to endure them was increased. We were able to pay for those medical bills. It was a challenge, but it's been interesting as a reminder for me that you have to make sure that you balance family and work and mental and physical health. And You have to make sure that you approach things in the right way. A couple of years as I was working with Joel in 2013, I remember he and I were talking about, hey, how can we have more people hear about Kodiak Cakes? How can we grow this business to be that much bigger? And we started to see that whenever people would write about it on a blog, or whenever they would taste Kodiak Cakes, they would say how much they loved the product. They would tell their friends, they would tell their family. So we knew if we could just get people to try Kodiak Cakes, that hopefully that would be what could work to grow the business. And we weren't entirely sure, we didn't have this huge budget to go and spend and do, TV commercials or a big ad campaign. But I remember he and I were talking about it, and we were like, hey, I mentioned to him, I said, hey, what if we went on Shark Tank? And I remember him saying, yeah, sure, go for it, man. Why don't you apply for the show? And my wife and I had watched, a couple of seasons before that. And we were like, man, this would be so cool if we could get on the show. So I remember, Joel and I both agreed that getting on the show would be awesome. So I filled out an email and sent it to the casting department of Shark Tank, and then forgot about it. And I figured, well, I'm just throwing out a line, and maybe a fish will pop on, but probably not. So whatever. It's just a lot of little. Well, that's kind of what you do, right? You send out a lot of fillers and try a lot of different things until something works, right? I mean, if you have to catch a fish, you're going to try a lot of different things to try and catch that fish. You're not just going to throw the line out and sit and wait. And you may do that at first. Once you see that no fish is biting, you're going to change the bait. You're going to change what you're putting on it. You're going to start fishing in a different spot. You're going to fish at a different time of day. And so that's a lot of what Joel and I were trying to do and think about when we were trying to really focus on how can we get more awareness and trial for Kodiak Cakes. I remember one night I was with my wife, and I got a call on my phone, and it said California. And I remember thinking, I don't know that I know anyone from California. This was before a lot of telemarketers had your phone number and were calling you anyways. And I answered, and I said, hey, this is Cameron. And they said, yeah, we were from the casting department of Shark Tank, and we want to talk to you about Kodiak Cakes. My jaw was on the floor. I was blown away, like, wait, it actually, okay. So now there's kind of a fish on the line, no pun intended. And, how can we reel this fish in, and how do I make sure that we don't lose it off the line? And they told us, they said, hey, look, we think Kodiak Cakes could be a great fit on Shark Tank. We'd love to talk to you guys further. Could you guys put together a video and fill out this questionnaire to hopefully come on the show? And I remember Joel and I thought, yeah, that'd be awesome. So we went into the office the next day. We made this video and we filled out the questionnaire. As we were filling out the entire questionnaire, at the very end, we saw where it said, if you agree to go on the show, you agree to give up a percentage of your business or royalties forever from the business. And when Joel and I saw that, we kind of paused and then decided, you know what, let's actually not go on Shark Tank. That doesn't make sense, because we'd maybe give up a percentage of the business, and we're not sure that we want to do that. So let's just not. So I remember Joel and I talked about that, and that was a really hard decision to make, because we knew that millions of people watch Shark Tank every year. We knew that if that got on, that would help catapult the brand and products to more people. But we decided it wasn't in the best interest for Kodiak Cakes to do that today. So I reached back out to the casting director and I said, hey, thanks so much for being willing to bring us on, but because of this part, we're going to have to pass. And she emailed me right back and said, hey, I hope you'll reconsider. We're actually taking that out for this season. We'd really love to talk to you guys more about Kodiak. And I remember Joel and I thought, well, shoot, okay, I guess we're back on then. Let's see if we can make this work. So we sent in that video, the questionnaire, and we didn't hear anything for a few weeks. And then we got a call and they told us that we had been moved along to the next round, and that producers would contact us and we would start working with them. We worked with those producers for a few months. They then flew us out to California to be on the show. And I remember when we were in California, it was, they flew us out on a Saturday, and then we went in front of the Sharks on Wednesday morning. So Joel and I were out in California for a couple of days, and we were grilling each other on questions about Kodiak cakes to try and make sure that we were as prepared as possible to make sure that we were thinking through everything that we needed to think through to be fully ready with whatever question they would ask. We were also told that there were over 30,000 companies that applied to be on Shark Tank, and they only accepted 140. So now if you think about driving your nerves through the roof, you're going to go in front of these sharks. You know that you're one of few people selected, and really at the end of the day, not to blow it, because this could be on national TV and would be something that, your family, your posterity could know you by, and maybe in a good and sometimes in a bad way. When we went on the show, it was such a unique, scary, and exciting experience. Joel and I were in there for probably about 40 to 45 minutes, and they were asking us a lot of questions about Kodiak cakes and about ourselves, and about where the brand was going and what we needed to do. We were told that the brand wasn't that strong, which honestly at that time wasn't entirely untrue. We were doing about 2 million, in yearly sales up to that point. We were told that people didn't care as much about whole grains, but more about gluten-free. We were told that the business wasn't worth as much as we thought it was at the time. We valued it at one-time sales. We said we're seeking $500,000 for 10%. We were on track to do about 5 million in sales, so we thought that seemed like an appropriate valuation. We ended up walking off the show without an investor and hoping that they would air it months later on TV. And you think about all the adversity that we faced in those questions, in those doubts, and when people start to doubt you, it becomes that much easier to doubt yourself. And sometimes you have to have those blinders on, and sometimes it causes you to really think and really ask yourself questions on, why am I doing this? How sure am I that this is going to work? And what do we need to do to take to the next level? After we went to California, we came back and it was back to normal. So we went in the summer of 2013, and our episode didn't air until April 2014. So we had about 9 months while we were just waiting, hoping that our episode was going to air on ABC. We didn't hear anything until a few weeks into end of March, where they reached out and said, hey, your episode's going to air on this day in April. And it was huge. It was such an exciting moment for us, because something that we had worked hard for was going to come to fruition. We were going to be on national TV. We're going to have the opportunity for millions of people to hear about Kodiak cakes for the first time. It was exactly what we needed and hoped for. We made sure to get everything ready, and yet our website crashed right after it aired on the East Coast. Even after all the work that we had done, we sold out at Target, our largest retailer, within 24 hours. It was all the momentum that we could hope and want for. But it's interesting, because sometimes with all that momentum, you're still faced with challenges. We had all this momentum, and yet we sold out. So how can we produce more and get more to the stores without missing out on sales? After Shark Tank, we saw the brand start to really grow with consumers and become a brand that they loved and trusted. That momentum that we hoped from Shark Tank would now push those retailers that didn't want to carry us or our items to realize that more people wanted it. But that didn't happen like we wanted. We were hoping that these retailers would see Kodiak cakes now as a larger brand, that they needed to carry our products, but they didn't all see that. I remember calling a retailer and I kind of almost had this moment of, hey, we've arrived. I call them up and I said, hey, I'm calling Kodiak cakes, and I'm kind of waiting for them to say, oh yeah, I've seen that on Shark Tank. Nothing. And I'm saying to them, yeah, so we were on Shark Tank. Oh, okay. Yeah, and we're in Target, and I'm kind of going through these, what you could see as validators that, hey, this is going to work in your retailer. It's not going to be as risky of an item. And the response that I got was, Yeah, look, I have a lot of different categories, and categories like cereal, oatmeal, granola bars. I have a lot of these other categories that are a lot more important to me hitting my goals than the pancake category. So if you can send me some samples, I'll take a look at it, but I don't know that I have a ton of time to get into the pancake category. And so all of this momentum that we had, all of this excitement that I had built up got deflated. And and I was faced in that moment with another one of those fork in the roads, another one of those, where am I going to take it from here? And how am I going to respond personally and for the business? And I remember at that time, I thought a lot about the Lord loves to see effort. If I work hard enough, if I try hard enough, things can and will work out. Maybe not necessarily the way I thought they would, but they'll work out. As we started thinking differently about Kodiak cakes, we started thinking more about what are other parts of the grocery store that we need to take Kodiak cakes to, because we're having challenges. We have all this momentum and every reason to believe that it could be successful in the pancake part of the grocery store in every retailer, but it just wasn't happening. So I want to start working with other buyers at these retailers. I want to start working with the frozen buyer who was dealing with frozen waffles, because at that time we saw that frozen waffles didn't have for us what was real innovation. There were different forms, and sometimes there'd be Mickey Mouse waffles or Spider-Man waffles, but we didn't really see any real innovation that we saw here as Kodiak of whole grains, higher protein. And I kind of saw this as, all right, we need to pivot. We need to adjust. How do we get into more parts of the grocery store while still focusing on pancakes? And this was one of, in my opinion, and probably Joel's, one of the best decisions that we could have made to start going to different parts of the grocery store. And this is where you start to see, or I've realized, and I've realized a lot throughout my life, that God is in control, that he has a plan for each of us individually. And that's why it's so easy to be optimistic, because when you know that he's there, when you know that he's aware of you, you know that things will work out how he wants them to work out for you, and that he has that plan, that he'll put things in place for you because he loves you. And sometimes that's going to mean that you're going to be successful in business. Sometimes that's going to mean that you're going to be successful in whatever that looks like, because he cares about you and he wants to see you grow and he wants to see you learn. And as we started chasing frozen waffles, what we saw as a huge opportunity, there wasn't a lot of innovation. There wasn't a lot of brands that they could bring people back to the category. We were hit with challenge after challenge. It wasn't a walk in the park, and I think sometimes we wished it would have been. But one of the first challenges we faced was we couldn't find anyone to make the waffles for us. We had this great product, and no one could make it. What we do at Kodiak Cakes is we use something called co-mans. We have people who we manufacture the products for us, and we tell them what to make, how to make it, how many to make, and they just run it on their lines. We don't own any of that, so that we can focus more on selling and marketing the brand, and they can focus on what they do really well. So we couldn't find anyone to make frozen waffles. There weren't a lot of people out there that made frozen waffles. The other challenge is once we found someone that can make it for us and we started running it on their lines, it wasn't working. It was sticking to the waffles, the product was dry, it was having issue after issue after issue. And that was another bump in the road. So now we face two bumps in the roads on this item that we're sure could be really successful. We made it through that bump in the road. Third, when we got the formula right, we started selling it into retailers, and retailers were really excited about it because it was a new brand that could come and start to disrupt what was happening in this category. We told the people who were making it for us to prepare because we think this could be pretty big. And we started selling it, and we were running out of capacity. We were running out of product to sell. We couldn't make it fast enough. So now we have another challenge to try and figure out how can we make more products. So we decided to, once again, try and think differently. We had that fork in the road, and how were we going to approach that fork in the road? And we decided to partner with one of these manufacturers and help them buy a new line fully dedicated to us. It took a year for it to get up to speed. Then it was up to speed, and then we were able to have that much more capacity. We were able to control our own destiny, if you will. Lastly, or another challenge that we faced just in frozen waffles, is the product had consistency issues. So when we would make it, sometimes it would be dry a month later, and when consumers tried it, they'd say it was dry. And there's supposed to be 8 waffles in every carton. There were 7 in some of them, and there were just some of these consistency issues that we were faced with that we had to think differently. We had to resolve some of these challenges to keep moving forward. But all these bumps in the roads, we had to get around. But we always thought too, if others can get around them and if others can figure it out, we can as well. We thought about that a lot at Kodiak Cakes. If other people can do these different things, we can as well, and we can work on this. Joel and I would always talk about if other people can get their products into retailers, if other people can grow brands from smaller to bigger, we can as well. We just have to think differently. We just have to approach it in another way, and we would be able to succeed. We've been so fortunate to have a lot of success, but none of it has been without its share of adversities, whether that's business, whether that's personal, whether that's mental challenges. A lot of that we face right now of Kodiak, if you look at the COVID world, so Kodiak today, we're doing over 200 million a year in sales. We have about 80 employees, and we got hit with COVID, which threw our world upside down. We just finished an office here in Park City, and now everyone's working from home. Now we're trying to really figure out what this new world looks like and how can we help our team stay motivated and be able to, figure out their individual things that they're working on. And, if you would have told Joel and I 10 years ago that Kodiak would be where it's at today, I would have said, no way, no how. There's no way that'll happen, because I am not prepped to run a business at that size. Joel would say, I'm not prepped to run a business at that size. But because we've wanted to grow, because we've wanted to scale and get to a higher level than the business is so that we can continue to grow the business, we've been able to do that. But that hasn't been without a lot of prayer, a lot of doubt, a lot of hope, and we've seen things happen and things just work out. And like I said earlier, as I think back to those earlier days and think back to why I joined Kodiak Cakes when I did, I don't have a lot of clear thoughts, a lot of rational thoughts that make a ton of sense. And it's just that confirmation to me that through adversity, through everything in our life, our Heavenly Father is in the details. He is so aware of everything that we're going through. And there have been times recently in the last 6 to 12 months for myself when I've wanted to grow as a leader. I've wanted to be better than where I'm at. I wanted to get to a different level. And as I've prayed, as I've fasted to Heavenly Father and asked for help becoming a better leader and help to know those things that I don't know, I've seen answers to those prayers. I've seen that He cares about me. He knows me, and He wants the very best for me. And I just know that there's so much more in life than just business or just a job or whatever it is, and that there is a grand plan. There are things that Heavenly Father wants us to be thinking about and wants us to grow in. So anyways, I say that in the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Thank you. Thank you, Cameron. I appreciate you sharing that. Really appreciate you sharing your testimony there and also your experiences. And I think that was really interesting about the pancakes versus the waffle experience. And then also your experience, when you prayed and asked for what direction that you needed to go and that confirmation that you received, um, having confidence in that, even though others around you might not believe in it, and doubt your abilities, you stuck with that confidence. And I
Hmm.
think that's really what makes the difference, is when you receive that confirmation from the Spirit, people are going to doubt you. They're going to say, well, not sure, what you're doing. And you're like, well, I do because I received that inspiration.
Hmm.
I really appreciate you sharing that. So what we'd like to do, Cameron, is we'd like to open this up to questions, the Q&A. Are you ready for that, Cameron, or did you have anything
Yeah.
else?
Nope. Nope. That's perfect. Let's do it. That is a great question, Corbin. It's funny. So my sister, she's trying to launch a game right now, like a board game, and she's reached out. Her and I have talked a couple of times. She's reached out to a couple of game companies, and things just haven't totally worked. And about 2 weeks ago, she said to me, she said, "Have you ever faced much rejection?" And it's kind of funny because a lot of what I talked about here, I have faced so much rejection, and when she asked the question, I thought to myself, man, maybe I've just tried to be so optimistic that people haven't seen the rejection and haven't seen how that's impacted me. And your question, Corbin, it's such a good question because we're all going to face rejection at different parts of our life, and sometimes that rejection, sometimes it's going to hit hard. Sometimes it's going to hit right to our heart and our mind, and it's going to cause us and our ground to really, really shake. Um, Sometimes when the rejections come from me, I've had to qualify the rejection and I've had to put the rejection in different buckets. Some of the rejection has been valid rejection. And that, what I mean by that is that rejection has been, look, I don't think this is going to work because people don't know about the product. People, how are they going to try it? So unless you're willing to put money behind educating people on Kodiak cakes, it's not going to work. So the more I've understood why for their rejection, the more I've been able to understand what the rejection is really about. Is it really that the product's not going to work, or is it really about they need to see more from us to get it to work? Um, and that's kind of helped me feel like the rejection isn't personal. It's them being honest. And so for me, one of the things I've thought a lot about is asking questions. So when someone says, no, I'm not interested, hey, can you help me understand why? Can you help me understand what is it about this that you're not interested? Um, and but I've also had my fair share of rejection that has made me question myself and question my abilities and why I'm doing what I'm doing. And so I think when it starts to hit your confidence, you have to separate out what I'm doing from work and who I am. When someone says they're not interested in Kodiak, it's not because they hate me and I'm a horrible person. It has more to do with, like, in my role as a retail buyer, I just don't see this totally working. So for me, as the Sharks would say, I'm out. When we walked out, Joel and I, a lot of times these rejections, they kind of became chips on my shoulder. We walked out of Shark Tank, and I remember thinking, wait a second, they don't think this is going to work out? Fine, I'm going to show them. I have this chip on my shoulder. I wanted to show people, I wanted to prove that I could do it, that we could make something out of this. And so that's the other thing that rejection can do is, it's funny, having four little kids, you think about Cars a lot, right? Cars, the movie. And in Cars, the movie, I was talking to my wife and I said, hey, you know that part? I don't remember what movie it's from where she says, use that. And my wife said, that's from Cars. You're talking about the Cars animated movie with your kid that you watch with your kids. But sometimes rejection, it can be motivating. It can be, you know what? I want to prove because I know that if I work hard enough, if I try hard enough, I can figure things out. might have to think differently. I might have to approach it in another way, but I can figure it out. So that rejection became motivation. But it's a great question, Corbin. And I think like it doesn't stop. um, you know, I think there have been so many. I think there have been so many turning points. There are so many, and as I kind of said, so many just forks in the road. Um, I remember President Monson would talk a lot about Alice in Wonderland and how she hit the fork in the road. She hit that point when the road separates off, and she gets to the Cheshire Cat, and she says, "Where does this path go?" And he said, "Well, where do you want to go?" And she says, "I don't know where I want to go." And then the cat says, "Then it doesn't matter which path you take, because if you don't know where you want to go, then you can take whatever path." And so one of the turning points for me was when I started to realize that if I didn't have mapped out in my life, whether it's my career, whether it's spiritual, whether it's personal, whether it's, family or physical goals or mental goals, if I didn't have mapped out where I was trying to go, then it didn't matter what I did today, because I was going to land wherever the choices I did today took me then. And that's when I started to realize and think a lot about, where are we trying to go? We brought our first investors on about 4 years ago, a little over 4 years ago. And before then, Joel and I had always thought, hey, we could grow Kodiak to $100 million business. And these investors said, hey, I think you could grow it to $1 billion. I think this could be a really big business, and you guys could do that. And that started to really focus my mind on, where could we go? And could we really take Kodiak to this next level? And how would we do that? And so that kind of became a turning point for me, something that I thought a lot about on where we're trying to go and how we can get there. Whew, man, that is a great question. My degrees. So I graduated from LDS Business College with an associate's degree in business and an accounting certificate, and then I went to the U and graduated with a bachelor's in business administration. So my degrees weren't necessarily, I didn't come acclaimed. I didn't have all this background. And then when Joel and I met up, it was almost like the combination of the two of us that really helped us to be successful. I didn't know what I didn't know. And because of that, I was more prone to try new things, to take a different approach, and to ask more questions, and to think at a higher level. And Joel and I would talk about, okay, how can we grow this? And I'd say, well, what if we did it this way? And what if we tried this? And there were things that Joel hadn't maybe tried or thought of, because they've been doing this for so many years and didn't have or see the success and what they were wanting out of Kodiak. And so he, we, throughout all of this, I was always just, all right, this will work out. Okay, let's try this. Now let's try that. And, sometimes I think my optimistic personality doesn't always see the challenges and doesn't always look back and reflect on the hard times. As I was preparing to talk to all of you, I thought a lot about, okay, what were some of the hard times? And as I thought about all those hard times, I was able to stop and reflect and really think back that, man, those were hard times, but I almost didn't see it, because I wanted to stay so close to the Lord and know that he was going to make things work out. And if that meant Kodiak was going to be successful, then so be it. If that meant something else was going to be the plan, then that works too. And so I think that's easier said than done. But really, the more you focus on where you can go, and the more you focus on how to get there and to think differently, I think that was probably a big thing for Kodiak, because we did face some financial challenges. We we had an order from Target that I was really excited about. It was Target's first order. We had done a little over $1 million, and their order was $250,000. And we had no idea how we were going to pay for that and how we were going to get it produced. We had to figure it out. Joel had to borrow money from his dad, but things worked out. We were able to have that happen, but I feel like so much of this has to do with just working hard. And, a lot of times people approach their work or their jobs like it's just a job. But when they start to when you start to approach it that you want to do the very best you can and you want to work really hard, that's when the effort really comes in, and that's when you start to learn more than you thought you could. That's when ideas happen. We talk a lot about collaboration and empowering people, and you start to see positive things happen from people interacting and working together. But yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I think it's both. I think, as you think about it, the work ethic gets you started, and it helps frame your mind around the type of work that you're going to do. And then that work ethic, once you apply it in the right way, and once you prioritize the most important things first, that's when you start to see the real impact of that right work ethic. But it's a good question. I mean, you can have great work ethic, but if you're not focusing on the things that are going to drive the biggest impact, then the work ethic doesn't help you as much. I knew earlier on, and not because I knew this, just because it felt this way, but I felt that if we could get Kodiak cakes into more grocery stores, that we would see success. Joel didn't actually tell me, hey, why don't you start calling all these retailers? I didn't have experience. And so he didn't told me, we weren't ready to do that. But I just started calling them and started reaching out to them. And because I knew that we needed to get into retailers and we needed people to hear about Kodiak cakes. So I was talking to retailers and I was reaching out to bloggers. And I feel like that focused effort helped us learn things that we would need to know years later. But yeah, it's a great question. I was really fortunate to join a business that was a little established, but not significantly established. I think starting a business from the ground up is really challenging. I think it's really exciting because you think about owning your own business, you controlling where you can go, you can control your hours you work, and all of the fun, flashy things that a business looks and feels like. When you actually get in the business, I feel like all of that goes out the window. You can't actually control your hours. You don't have the freedom that you want and are hoping for. And you have to put in a lot of effort. But what I would say for someone who wants to start their own business is don't give up. Don't let people shake your confidence, but make sure that you listen and you adapt and adjust as necessary. So the business idea that you have today may make a ton of sense, but when you hear feedback from people, it may help it get that much better. And you may be able to adjust and get the business to a different place than even you thought, because you've been able to get some good perspective from those around you. But yeah, it's a really good question.
I do want to thank you so much, Cameron Smith, for coming and talking with us and sharing your experience, and most important, your testimony and your experience with our Heavenly Father as you tried to find guidance. And to me, I think the thing that stuck out the most to me is the word control. You use that a lot. And I think we think sometimes we can control things, but I know who's the ultimate person in control. And as we tap into that higher power, our Heavenly Father, that we're going to receive that guidance and direction to steer us in the right way. So thank you again.
Sounds great. No, appreciate everyone. Thank Thanks for joining, taking time out of your schedule.
All right. Thanks, everyone.